This is number 3. Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be, I mean, it would be technically your turn to mediate, which means I've got to answer first. I've got to think of something.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you're good on your feet, Callum. What are 3 things, or maybe one thing to start off with, that you've learnt in month 3 that has a nice ring to it?
What would I say I've learned? I'd say I've learned that actually it can all change very, very quickly. I would say that when you think you're having a quiet period, it can pivot. Like so for now, it feels like now that we've done our last round of pitching for a little bit, we've got hopefully got another one coming up in a couple of weeks, but it feels a little bit quieter again. It can all change in a day. Like there was one day we had 2 leads come through in a single day, and all of a sudden you're back to it being extremely busy, stressful again. So kind of follows on from the themes that we were talking to before, but not sweating the quiet periods and getting too down in those, because like we were saying, it does change very, very quickly, and things move quite quickly up until a point, and then you're waiting for decisions. So I'd say that in month 3, yeah, just don't sweat the quiet days, don't sweat the quiet periods, try and focus on the bigger picture, kind of like what we said in our other reflections, and it can all change very, very quickly. But what about you, man?
Pitch responses can be like really overwhelming in terms of like not knowing or like how many assumptions you have to make.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing I'm going to remember in future, because to be honest, like I think the pressure made an absolute diamond. I'm really proud of the work that we put together. I think we said multiple times throughout the process that this is some of our best thinking. This is really a true reflection of what we're capable of, which is kind of what we wanted to do with the endeavor of CAM as a whole. But I think that age-old saying about like Occam's razor, like the simplest kind of response is usually the best one. I think you can trap yourself into overthinking about or overanalyzing a problem that a client puts in front of you, and you can find 11 different parts to get from point A to point B. But I think it's super important to make sure that you cover off the simplest path. It's part of it as well, and do that kind of clearly and immediately, so that there's no kind of like second guessing about do these guys really get the problem, or have they made something overcomplicated something that's quite simple. And I think we kind of did that in a lot of ways, which I'm happy about. I think we did it peripherally because we were just like, okay, we could do this in A, B, C, D, E, F, G kind of ways. But also, by the way, like you could do this if you wanted to type of thing. And that was like our kind of checking of the box. But I think next time I'd make that kind of more in the forefront, and that thinking more in the forefront, and then show them other ways to kind of get to their destination. But yeah, you can really get carried away with when you've got a blank slate and a very kind of overarching kind of problem to solve. You can really kind of get into that. I don't want to say that like kind of agency mode where you kind of just like X, Y, Z kind of, you're being innovative, or, you're being strategic for the sake of being strategic, and not being very practical. But yeah, that would be the big thing that I've learned this month.
Yeah. That has probably inspired my second thought, funnily enough, on approach, actually building on approach, and I guess focusing on authenticity, which is props to you actually, before I say this, because this was saying that you actually challenged and made a good point of. One of the conversations we had just before the pitch was around approach to delivery, and taking on board a piece of advice we had from someone extremely reputable in market about how to deliver a pitch in the best possible way, not just for the client to understand, but also to give yourself the best chance of winning it. And it slightly compromised our approach, ethics, and why we do what we do around being direct, informative, to the point, black and white. It kind of convoluted that. And you're the one that steered us on the path of no, we've done this to do it this way, and this is why we're doing it. So I think retaining your I don't want to say DNA because that feels like a media term, but like retaining why you're doing something in not just the bigger things, as in building the pitch and building the narrative and all that, but even the smaller things of how it's delivered, being consistent with your approach all the way through is, I think, going to stand us in really good stead. And it's probably the first instance we've had, or I've had, where we might have got distracted and potentially swayed off that because it was the first time we was in that situation. So I think you bringing us back into center and being like, no, this is, it might work, but this is why we're going to do it this way. And it's important that we stick to this, I think, is another good learning, which you taught me. So there you go. It wasn't even a Cam learning, it was a Nims learning.
I think I always find myself saying that's a really good point, but I genuinely, I think you always bring up stuff that we were joking about it today. We work so long together. I feel like we've kind of been married. We share a trait, But on that point, I think I have a lot of admiration for people that start stuff on their own, because I think we're very lucky to have each other in the sense that we pick each other up when things are down, or we vice versa. We have someone to celebrate the wins with as well. But more often than not, if we're thinking a certain way, we have someone to bounce an idea off. And, I think in that instance as well, our character is kind of being challenged because we were in a difficult position. Obviously, starting an agency, taking the risk, taking a plunge into, providing for yourself and, making things out of nothing can, really challenge you and, put forth instances where you're like, okay, maybe I can make a slight compromise here or there, or but vice versa. I think there are times where you might have an idea, as in I might have an idea where I'm quite rigid, and I know that I'm naturally quite conservative as well. So it's nice to kind of bring things to you, and I think you're a little more adventurous in a lot of ways. So you're willing to push me and go, no, I think, that might be a bit too safe. Let's try and find a compromise between where I'm at and where you're at. And I think naturally, we end up in really good territory that way. But yeah, I think having each other has been a real blessing, because I think we naturally have strengths on either side of the scale, which is perfect.
Definitely.
A business partner, but just broadly speaking, being able to do it with someone else is, there are people out there that do it entirely on their own, and just massive props to anyone that goes out and takes a risk and starts a business on their own. But to do it by yourself is,
man, kudos to those people that do it on their own. Like, that's even the accountability of it. I was thinking this the other day, like the accountability of we check in 9 a.m. every single day. We do not miss that. If you were on your own, there would be times you'd I'll start at 9:30, I'll start at 9:15, or I work, it gives us this. You start your day with a rigid structure of we're off, rather than this whole flexible way of working, which will establish as we go into having more recurring roles and responsibilities with always on clients and stuff. But for now, having that other person purely from an accountability standpoint as well, I think it's really helped us. So yeah, man, it's good.
It is indeed. All right, man. I feel like we've covered some really good territory there. What about things that you're kind of wanting to keep in mind for the month ahead, and what's on the radar for month 3/4?
It goes against our natural affinity to do this as people, but I do think we do need to be doing a bit more self-promotion.
Yeah.
Especially while it's quiet, I think we do need to be making a conscious effort to get the Cam brand out there more. And we have one thing in mind while you're on annual leave that we'll be doing, which will probably help with that, but we need to be doing more. And I think, I don't know about you, but I know me, because we've been doing other things, I've deliberately put it to the bottom of my pile purely because I don't want to do it, which is not a good attitude to have. But been able to say, oh, we know we've got X, Y, and Z going on, so we don't have the time. In reality, we probably did have the time, but we've just avoided it. And I think the next month and the run up to Christmas, especially with January being such a big month of the year for everybody, I think we ourselves need to be doing more from a brand building perspective of if it's our own profiles or the cam profile, whatever it is, we do need to be doing that. So I would say that one. What about you?
For sure. You bring up a really good point. I think I've kind of felt that as well. Like, especially seeing other agencies pop up and, you know, do a lot of the promotional groundwork very early on in the piece to get their name out, and, you know, being really impressed by what they're doing as well. I think everyone's got a place in market, and not wanting to kind of, you know, I think, you know, something that we used to say in our old organization, you can steal with pride, you know, and know the fact that people do something great, and they've kind of approached a problem in a very different way than you know, you would, and you can take that and kind of add it to your toolkit. So yeah, along the same lines, I think some good advice that we got early on in the piece from another independent agency, who have been around in market for a while and flourished really well, is to, like, it's an inevitable, no matter how much of you know, recluse you are in some respects professionally, and like regardless of the fact that you prioritize, you know, work and client satisfaction, if people don't know who you are, then they're very unlikely to kind of consider you for to work with them or to pitch for their business. So but you don't have to compromise your ideals to do that. So you don't have to do it in a way that is you know, that, yeah, it essentially sells your soul, you know. And I think that's why we do these reflections. Like, they're a way for us to, you know, show people that we're, you know, committed to the process, and you know, be really forthcoming about our journey, but also to get ourselves out there in a way that we haven't really done in the past. And yeah, I definitely agree. There's like an evolution that needs to come off the back of this. We'll figure out what that thing is, but for the moment, yeah, it's definitely on my list as well.
Yeah, I think that is a good kind of focus point for us, especially as it's quiet, because you always need something to do. There's always something to do, and maybe that's what we concentrate our efforts on and get better at it, because our output of work is improving the more we do it. So I feel like our brand building and exposure and the way we do things will improve the more we do it. We just need to take the plunge.
For sure. Yeah, probably the only thing on my radar is, I think the more that we pitch, the better that we get at it, and the better the quality of work, like the deliverable, like, quality is just go from strength to strength to strength. But I think that we can get better with outreach, because we do it so much, and we've had relative success with it. But I really do think that we could get even better with what we're doing. And a lot of this quarter is going to be outreach, because, you know, when you wait for leads to drop, when you wait for decisions to be made, there's going to be a lot of time, you know, that you're sitting idle. And obviously part of that will be, you know, building the brand and, you know, getting our names out there. But I also think a big part of it will be, you know, how do we finesse our outreach? How do we get even better at, you know, engaging potential clients, or, you know, existing clients or leads that, you know, have shown initial interest, but, you know, kind of fallen by the wayside. So
on that, do you mean, just to clarify, do you mean in terms of getting better at identifying the right people to speak to, or getting better at the language and the content that we send them as
both.
Right?
Both. Yeah, I think what we do right now is assume, like, being very critical about the way that we kind of go about things. Like, we, you know, typical outreach stuff, org structure, you know, a proper LinkedIn stalk, you know, going into information about the brand, recent campaigns, you know, trade press, etc., etc. Find the right person, reach out to them. But I think the assumption is that we, you know, we always go with tailored messaging as well, which I think is would love to keep doing that. I think that's the best way to
100%.
engage people. We take the time to learn about what they're doing in market, whether it's in channel or just broadly speaking performance, and then we find an angle in that way, which is obviously time consuming, but I think it's worth all the time. But I don't know. I always think there's a step further we can take things, particularly when, the assumption is that people will respond to that. And, they, to be really candid, they haven't responded at the rate that we would have liked. So that means to me that we're not doing it in the best way and there's room for improvement. And not to say that we haven't, done it well, because I think that we have done it differently.
I agree.
But yeah, I think there's more that we can do on that front. So yeah, turning that kind of response rate and getting that kind of coming in the right direction, that's going to be like my pet project for the next 3 months, or the next month ahead, specifically. Yeah.
I like that. No, I think, and look, if we can master that, I think that will make a massive difference to all facets of our business, not just the couple of clients that we're doing that for. I just think if you can master that, that's a huge sales pipeline opportunity that you can really nail. No, man, I think I wouldn't have thought of that. That's actually a very good point.
Nice. Cool, man. Is there anything else you want to kind of touch on before we get cracking? We actually, have to get cracking on something pretty soon, but yeah.
True. The only thing I'd say, actually, and we said about this in the car the other day, building a strong briefing approach for us, not necessarily loading the client with extra work, but having very, very clear questions that we need to ask at every possible tissue session or ideation session that we have that informs the response. Because the learnings from a couple of pitches we've done is maybe we didn't ask the right questions all of the time. And so that when it came to building the pitch, there were still some grey areas that we probably should have fielded questions on, and maybe it was a case of in those initial ones, just because of ignorance, we weren't to know. But now we've done that, I think one of the things I'd like to work on over the next month is getting a very, very robust briefing structure that we can just roll out as and when we need to. So that'd be the only other thing I'd add.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Really good point. Awesome, man. Well, every month I'm kind of like, are we going to have new stuff to talk about? But
we do.
We hit the record button and the thoughts just come out, don't they? But
so true.
Cool. Looking forward to month 4, man, and seeing what it all brings. But so far, so good.
So far, so good. Let's keep it rolling.